to In the Hall with Sam and Dave.
What?
Sorry. Now, back to In the Hall with Sam and Dave.
What?
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
On CBS Sports Radio, 1450.
What?
The Hall.
Welcome back inside the Basketball Hall of Fame on this Wednesday afternoon, rainy Wednesday, not a good day out here in New England. And it wasn't a good night it's a good night on Monday night in New England either. And right now we're going to welcome in John Lyons, writer for the blog Sports of Boston. And John, we're going to kick it right off. What's wrong with these New England Patriots?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, guys. And second, really, there's so many issues going on at one time that you can't really blame even one group. I mean, a lot of times over the years when the Patriots have struggled, I mean, you look at 2006 when they lost in the AFC Championship, you could say they didn't have enough receivers or they needed to do a better job covering the Colts tight ends. Or in 2007 and 2011, they need to handle pass rush better, or that they need to improve the defense. But with this team, there's just so many issues all snowballing at once. And part of it is they don't have the talent on the field on offense. Offensively, on the offensive line, Solder and Vollmer are former Pro Bowlers or all pros or have played well. But interior, it's just been a disaster. And I thought that Monday night, the interior of the offensive line with Brian Stork inserted actually played pretty well overall, but of course the one time they did was when Solder and Vollmer had their probably worst games as a pro each. So, and then the receivers are having some trouble getting separation, and even when they do and they're open, Tom Brady's just missing some throws or he's making some bad reads. And then defensively, to me, Jamie Collins and Chandler Jones just look horrid against the run. I mean, Chandler Jones has been a monster rushing the quarterback. Jamie Collins has been pretty good in coverage, but against the run, they're just getting steamrolled, especially when on the same side. And it almost seems like, to me, in some areas, they're overthinking it. Like, you have Darrelle Revis. Just put him on somebody, man coverage, to shut the guy down. You don't need to play him in zone or in off for a whole game or even a quarter. And, you know, it seems like they're almost trying to do too much on defense because they now finally have the talent that they haven't had really since probably 2007, 2008.
We're talking with John Lyons. Follow him on Twitter at @TheRealJohnLyons. John, Rodney Harrison went on WEEI the other day, and he was talking about how Tom Brady looks scared in the pocket. Is that something that you see? Is there anything the Patriots can do internally to address these offensive line troubles that they've been having through the first 4 games of the season?
I think the most important thing they can do to start off is to pick 5 guys that are going to play and let them play and practice together full-time, play together full-time, because when you have an offensive line, even if you have the 5 most talented guys out there, you need to have 5 guys that play well together. I mean, if you look at over the years when they had Matt Light and Logan Mankins, I mean, they were together. Matt Light got here in 2001 and Mankins in 2005. They were together from 2005 to 2011 almost every single game. You know, Dan Copen was here from 2003 to I think it was 2010, you know, with Light and with some of those other guys for years. And that's one of the reasons that their line also, Coach Dante Scarnecchia, who's, if there's one thing we found out over the first 4 games this year, maybe he's one of the best assistant offensive coaches of all time, the way they've played without him. But continuity is a huge thing on the offensive line, and it's just something that they don't have. And as far as Brady being scared, I think over the past few years, there's been an issue when he faces teams that bring a lot of pressure that he's seen some ghosts. And, you know, the Jets showed it when they were better defensively a few years ago. The Giants showed it a little bit in the last Super Bowl. And the Ravens have showed it when they've been good in a couple AFC championship games. But I think if they were to figure out the offensive line and block better, then it would go a long way toward easing the entire rest of the offense. Because, yeah, Brady at times has had some happy feet and gotten rid of the ball too fast. But in a way, you almost can't blame him for anticipating pressure, at least this season, so much because it's been there so much.
Now, John, you mentioned it before, with so many problems kind of just snowballing at once. Are these the kind of problems the Patriots are having that can be fixed with a simple move, possibly a trade, or is this just something we're going to have to wait till they can maybe gain some cohesion, just working together with the offensive line, maybe some of the new receivers like LaFell learning their routes, the new tight end Tim Wright maybe learning his role, or are we going to see a move in the Patriots' future?
I think there's a combination of both. I think in the short term, for this season, I don't know if they're going to per se make a move or make a trade or anything like that, but there's a lot of errors that are going on that are coaching or fundamental related, which they could fix. I mean, if guys in the offensive line fundamentally block better and play more together, that'll fix some issues. If Brady can make some better reads on some better throws that guys are open, that'll fix some issues. If they just kind of, I don't want to say play simpler on defense, but play more to their guys' strength. Like if they stick Revis and Browner on guys and have them just cover guys, and if they have Jamie Collins maybe not play every single down because he's primarily a pass coverage guy, and if they can find someone else, and if they can have the spot next to Wilfork on the defensive line, have somebody play well. A lot of those things are correctable, and if they can, establish the one a little bit more. I don't understand why Aaron Dobson and Stephen Ridley either aren't playing or having a limited role in the offense. I mean, Ridley's easily your most talented running back, and he's a violent runner, and yes, he's had some fumbling issues, but when you're at a point like this where you're not playing well offensively, you want your best guys on the field, especially at skill positions. And Dobson falls right into that category. I mean, one of the reasons the Chiefs had one of their first interceptions Sean Smith had was two reasons. First of all, it was a poor throw by Brady, but second of all the Chiefs secondary was within 20 yards of the ball because they have nobody to respect deep. So it's much easier to make an interception when you have more guys around the ball. And long term, I think that they need to evaluate some positions on their coaching staff. I mean, when was the last time they've drafted and developed an elite defensive back or wide receiver? I mean, Devin McCourty is the only elite one that comes to mind. Alfonso Denner's pretty good at one corner. And wide receiver-wise, Julian Edelman, that's it. Since when? Since David Givens and Deion Branch in the early 2000s. So they got to look at who's coaching those positions because these guys, they have talent. Aaron Dobson has talent. Some of these other guys that they've drafted over the years, Darius Butler, they've had talent, but they haven't been developing and it hasn't been clicking. So I think they need to look there, and maybe they do need to take a look at their front office because, from 2000 to 2005, they drafted well, they signed the right free agents. Then in 2007, they did some good things, bringing in Randy Moss, Wes Welker, Dante Stallworth. Adelius Thomas was good for a couple of years before things went south there. But in the last 5 years, I mean, you can point to their 2010 draft when they drafted Devin McCourty, Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez, and Brandon Spikes. So they got 4 starters, but only 2 of them are still here. So, and Nate Solder, their first-round pick in 2011, struggling. Their first pick in 2013, Jamie Collins, their second pick in 2013, Aaron Dobson. One's not playing at all, and the other's not playing very well, especially against the run. So I think there are some short-term fixes that can definitely make them back into a contender this year. But long-term, I think there are some things that need to be addressed.
We have John Lyons of sportsofboston.com. John, the Patriots schedule in the next, let's call it, month and a half, 2 months or so, does not look kind to them. For those of you who don't have their schedule in front of you, they, of course, face the Bengals, allowing 11 points a game so far this season, this upcoming Sunday at 8:30. They face the Bills and the Jets, 2 very big in-division games that have been bigger than in past years. Then it gets tough. You have the Bears, Broncos, Colts, high-powered offensively Lions, Packers, and Chargers. What do they need to do? Realistically, what do you think the outcome, let's call the next 7-8 games, should be realistically as to what they need to move forward?
Well, this Cincinnati game, I think, is going to tell a lot because if they come out and they just play better defense, as in they simplify it a little bit, they just take Revis and take Browner and, put a guy on A.J. Green, and they play well against the run, and they can move the ball offensively, even if they, I don't want to say even if they don't win, but in a way, even if they don't win, but they can play really well, at least that'll be a sign of encouragement. But I'm never going to call a game in October a must-win game, but if they lose to Cincinnati, Then they have to go to Buffalo, face the Jets on a short week on a Thursday, and then go into the stretch of like Chicago, Denver, a bye week. Then they have to play Detroit and Green Bay and San Diego. And Phillip Rivers, by the way, in San Diego is my number one for the MVP right now. He's playing out of his mind, and right now they're the number 2 in the AFC behind the Denver, not the Patriots. San Diego's just playing really, really well this year. So you can't look down on their schedule from now until the middle of December and say they have an easy game. And even then, I mean, for the rest of the year, because even though Miami isn't playing well right now, and they're going to come here in December, and who knows what they're going to look like, they still beat the Patriots and dominated them in the second half. So this Cincinnati game is going to tell a lot. If they can come out and they can play well and they can win, whether it's a close game, whether they win somewhat easily, that's going to be a big thing, because for them to be 3-2 going to Buffalo and then facing the Jets is a lot better than 2-3 in a whole looking up in the division. So I think this week is going to tell a lot about what this team is going to be, not only now, but in December and maybe January.
With that said, the Patriots sitting at 2-2, tied atop the AFC East. Two other teams 2-2, the Bills and the Dolphins. The Jets still right there at 1-3. We're at the first quarter mark of this NFL season. Has any team distinguished themselves as the team to beat in the AFC East yet?
No, and that's not a good sign for the Patriots, because, I mean, when was the last time that they weren't the team to beat in the AFC East? I mean, you can point to 2008 with Matt Castle, which was the last time they didn't win it. But even that year, you could look at the beginning of the year and say, well, Brady's down, and we're probably only going to go 10-6 or so, or 9-7, or they ended up going 11-5. But they still had Randy Moss, Wes Welker. They had a top 10 defense that year. So this is the first time in a long time where you don't have as much confidence in them winning the division, because even though Miami, Buffalo, and the Jets are going to have their own struggles, because they're not elite teams or they're not perennial contenders yet, they're all built with one thing in mind, and that's beating the Patriots, especially Miami. I mean, the Jets were when they had Revis, and they might not quite have the talent they've had, but that's still, I mean, all three of those teams are built with an eye towards the Patriots, and I think in a way that's maybe hurt the Patriots over the years, that they haven't been building themselves with an eye of we need to beat this team, such as they did maybe in 2007 when they felt that they had to beat the Colts, so they went out and got Moss and Welker, Stallworth, Thomas, and maybe, as they did in, 2012 or so when they thought that they had to, beat Baltimore, so they at least went out and tried to make moves. They signed Brandon Lloyd. Didn't work out, but at least they had the urgency. And I think they did it a little bit this offseason, going out and getting Revis and somewhat to beat Denver. But because they haven't had to do that every year within their division, I think that's hurt them too.
Now, John, we talked about this the other week. We talked about realistic expectation for the Patriots. Just got shellacked 41-14. I know a lot of people might be jumping ship. Have you moved your realistic expectations of the Patriots yet, or are they pretty stable with where they were before?
Well, before the season, and I got to be honest, I thought they were a Super Bowl team. Right now, if
them and the Saints, sexy pick.
Yeah, and if they were to enter the playoffs right now, they would not be. But time, to a degree, is on their side. Now, we just talked about how tough their schedule is, so they have to play well soon, but they have time to improve. So I think right now, I still think they're a playoff team, because they're not as bad as they showed Monday. I think they're not as dominant as they showed against Minnesota. They're not as bad as they showed against Kansas City. So they're somewhere in between, but I don't think right now they're a Super Bowl team. I still think they could be, because they have enough talent, especially on defense, to be able to coach. If they, I don't want to say change coaching, but if they, view things a little bit differently, make some changes in what personnel they insert, when they insert them, and how they attack teams, I still think they'll be able to make a playoff run, play well in the playoffs, but you still have to score points to win. So they're going to have to figure out offensively how to put 20 points a game on the board, or 27 points a game on the board, because in today's NFL, a good defense is holding somebody to 17 or 20.
He's John Lyons of sportsofboston.com. Follow him on Twitter at @TheRealJohnLyons. Thanks a lot, John, for taking some time and trying to talk some Patriots fans off the ledge a little bit.
Yeah, hopefully I got some people not to jump.
He was John Lyons. Follow him on Twitter at @TheRealJohnLyons. When we come back, Tom Brady's alma mater, they're in some trouble. What's going to happen with Brady Hoke? We're going to talk about that on the other side. You're listening to In the Hall on CBS Sports Radio.